They came on the river by dog sled. The RCMP took 3 little girls, never to see their family again. My name is Holly Forche. I teach Indigenous awareness to government, schools, corporations, police departments, and other agencies. I'm on my way to Fort McKay First Nation in Northern Alberta to visit my mother. Her name is Lena Gallup. She was one of those 3 little girls. Mom was taken when she was 6 years old and spent the next 13 years in an Indian residential school. The memories still haunt her, but I'm encouraging her now to share her story with others.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Holly. So good to see you. Hi. Come on in.
Gruard Indian Residential School was like a prison. It was a horrendous experience. I always wanted to tell people about it because I wanted them to have an understanding of us. And I remember when I was a little girl in school, I would tell people about it and they thought I was lying. You know, so my entire life, there's been this thing looming over us about the legacy of residential school. And I know that everything you went through and just even this conversation is so hard because it makes me so sad that you went through all that, Mom. Lena wasn't alone. 150,000 children across Canada were ripped away from their families. The United Nations has called it a cultural genocide. Most people think it's ancient history. It's not. The last Indian residential school didn't close until 1996.
I can remember living here in Fort McKay, mostly with my grandmother. We were loved, and we lived up mostly off the land. And the RCMP came and took the 3 of us away by dog team. They took all our clothes and they put us in a tub with hot water, and they put 3 of us in there. And we didn't know what was happening. You know, these women had black robes on. My thinking right away was, you know, these people are going to boil us, you know. So we were all frightened, all crying. And they kept pushing us back into the tub every time we tried to, you know, try to get out.
Just going there and experiencing all that neglect and abuse, poor living conditions, poor diet, poor treatment, and it just makes me sad.
It was a big dorm. We had little white beds, row by row. I would say maybe about 55 or 60 of us in a dormitory. And my little sister was one end of the dormitory and I was at the other end. We didn't know where we were. They cut our hair, just chopped our hair off below your ear, like straight on. It's like putting a bowl on your head and cutting all around. We were so controlled, like giving us, you know, different kind of clothes to wear, you know, some kind of a clothing that felt very uncomfortable.
the government thought that they should do this policy where they take Indian children for over a century, where they take them to take the Indian out of the child. That was a policy.
We were taught, that we're savages and we were always wrong, we were sinful, and so on. And so we had a lot of guilt as well. If you didn't do something right, we would be punished, and in so many ways, In
the early days of the program, 1 in 2 children died. If you were a soldier in World War I, running into machine gun fire, you had a better chance of surviving that than you did as a child in Indian residential school.
We didn't know how to speak English. We never heard it spoken before. There was severe punishment for if you were caught, speaking your own language. And they would wash our mouths with soap. And so it took a long time before we were able to speak, even to each other. They had a strap, and at the end of the strap was some kind of nails. They would just strap at the end of our fingers, so where all your feelings are, your fingers, and you weren't allowed to cry out. We had to sleep with, on the right side of the bed, and with our hands under our pillow or under our head. I remember one time, I had fallen asleep, and I woke up when the nun came and slapped me and told me to get onto my side. It was a rude awakening, I might say. We were scared from everything. We cried. But it was my little sister who cried the most, and I couldn't go to her. Wouldn't be allowed. Just broke my heart. There was other things too I just don't want to talk about. It's very painful for me to talk about it. I've told Holly about it. Maybe she can talk about it for me sometime.
When Lena turned 18, she was given a one-way bus ticket to Edmonton, dropped off on a street, totally unprepared. She had never been to a city in her life. She has no money, no skills, no education, no job, no self-esteem.
A lot of the girls that came out before me went into prostitution. There were suicides. About 85% of the girls that I went to school with that came out to the streets of Edmonton died. When I first came back, it was 20 or some years after that I had left here when I was so small. There was just a handful of people that were left that remembered me. One of my aunts told me, when you left, when RCMP took you away from here years ago, she said, we all cried. And she kind of showed me where my mom was, in that corner somewhere, and my granny. All my family and my ancestors are here. And that's why I come here.
I can't imagine someone coming into my home and taken my kids. Like, I just can't imagine those left behind.
For the longest time, I feared God. It's only when I got out of there that I realized, that God is love. I think I've been very, very blessed in my life. Now that I'm 87, you can, thank the Creator of what I have accomplished and how my life has been. But, after residential school, where your chances sometimes didn't have a hope in hell, really. I survived residential school. I survived TB. I survived cancer. And now I'm working so hard to survive Fort Mackay. And I'm going to make it, okay?
Mom eventually married, had 4 children, and was active in Indigenous causes through the rest of her life. She helped more than 2,000 Indigenous kids in a group home that she owned and operated for 20 years. She did the opposite of Indian residential schools. Rather than take the culture away, she worked to put it back in. I'm optimistic. My mom is resilient. She's determined. She's feisty. For Lena's generation, it was a journey to reconnect to her culture, teaching young people the traditions. Lena survived, but not without scars. Our older generations, I feel, still carry the wounds of the legacy of Indian residential school. But I think those next generations are the change. And I will share your story, Mom. You're heard now. We have a voice now.